This is chapter 3, entitled Guard Your Heart. Keep guard thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. That's from Proverbs 4:23. After much thought and several more talks with her parents, the princess decided to go to the spring fair. However, she knew why she was going. Not to get, but to give. Not to make friends, but to be a friend. Not to fit into the crowd, but to demonstrate to others an example of true royalty. Goodbye, Father. Farewell, Mother, the princess said excitedly on the morning of the fair. Thank you again for your helpful advice. She fed Victory an apple, mounted him gracefully, and enthusiastically began her journey. Victory seemed excited today, too. The princess wondered what new experiences the day might hold. As she was riding across the bridge just outside the castle, she was stopped by a voice. Where, fair princess, art thou headed this fine day? Began the alligator. I'm going to the spring fair, and I be in a hurry. I have not the time to speak with thee now, she answered, squinting in the bright sunlight. Well, then, have a splendid day. It is a good thing that thou art headed to the fair. Thou wilt like it. I am glad that thou hast finally begun to make thine own decisions. Thou art mistaken, sir, she replied, as she turned Victory to face the moat. For I have always made my own decisions, as does everyone else. Some make wise ones, and others make foolish ones. Some listen to wise counsel, and others reject it. But each person decides for himself which course he will take. But some are so hidden in their own little world that they do not know what is happening in the world around them, objected the alligator. True, there is evil in the world, but you must get used to it, or in the end thou wilt most dreadfully be shocked. I can think of no more dangerous position than to learn to tolerate evil in order to become accustomed to reality, the princess said boldly. The one who becomes comfortable with that which is corrupt is quick to accept it, and what one accepts he will soon embrace. I pray that I will always be shocked by the evil of the real world. You misunderstand me, replied the alligator. I only intend to suggest that you learn to be independent. Thou wilt gain from new experiences, and it will be healthy for thee to socialize with friends of thine own age. I have not time to argue. However, your foolish words only make the words of my father to seem yet wiser. Let me just say that the one who socializes merely for his own purposes is foolish, and now I must be going. Anxious to be on her way, the princess rode quickly down the stone road. Soon she could hear voices and music coming from the fair. Remembering what her father had said about how she must have inner walls of protection, the princess purposed to be a white and pure rose, closed until the right time, as well as a bright candle giving light to others. Upon her arrival, she entrusted Victory to the town stable and began to mingle with the young ladies chatting in the park. The princess made friends quickly. She never acted as if she believed she ought to be treated as royalty. Rather, she was quick to serve, to fellowship with the villagers, and to put others first. Her kind words, gracious manners, and loving actions were obvious to all. In fact, if she had taken note, she would have realized that she received much more respect and honor as a result of these humble actions than she ever would have gained had she demanded admiration from others or proclaimed her own importance. But she did not even notice what others thought of her, for, as I said before, she was a true princess. Around noon, she seated herself on a blanket in the middle of the park, joining a company of her girlfriends who were about to set out a picnic. Just then she heard a pleasant voice behind her. Turning around, she found herself looking into the cheerful face of one of the young knights. "Princess, why ye sit here among the youth? One so honorable as thyself deserves a seat of dignity. Please join me at the table over yonder. I would much appreciate thy fellowship." "Why, thank you," the princess replied, but with a little hesitation continued, I really am just fine here. I enjoy the children and have met several lovely village girls." "Oh, princess, please come join me," he entreated. "I'm honored by your request, but really, I'd prefer to stay here." "Naturally. You ought to stay. Thy humility and kindness put me to shame. Of course the young ladies will appreciate thy friendship. But may I join thee here?" he asked. Well, certainly." "My name is Sir Eloquence," he said loudly as he immediately sat down right beside her and began conversing freely. "Tell me about the castle and thy plans for the future. I have long been a friend of thy family." The princess wondered why she had never heard of him, if he had been a friend for so long. She soon began to think that she had been too quick to welcome his company. Nevertheless, she answered his questions graciously and spoke of her family with their concerns for the kingdom. The young knight listened attentively to the princess's every word, laughed at her stories, and told many interesting tales himself. She enjoyed his fellowship, but she was also beginning to feel uncomfortable by his overly friendly manner. "May I accompany you home?" Sir Eloquence asked. "Thank you, but I prefer to ride alone. It was nice to meet you, though," she said. Then, without giving him time to respond, she added, "Goodbye, I enjoyed our visit." All the way home, the princess pondered the events of the day. Was I too friendly with Sir Eloquence? What if he is the right one? How do I know if I'm guarding my heart? The wise princess knew exactly whom she should ask for advice. What do you think? Do you think that the princess should have welcomed Sir Eloquence the way that she did? Do you think she should have talked as freely with him as she did? What do you think his thoughts toward her were? Do you think he cared about her as a person, or was he looking at her position and what that could do for him if he became her suitor? All right, getting into our chapter, our first section is called How Do I Protect My Heart? The heart is more than just emotions. It is the internal driving force of everything we do. What the heart desires is the most powerful force in our lives. Therefore, we need to make sure to guard it from those influences that would seek to divert, pollute, or steal our hearts. First, let's think about the practical ways to guard our heart as we interact with young men. In the previous chapter, we discussed the dangers of the dating system. Choosing not to date gives us a whole new freedom in relationships. Yet, we still have to figure out how we are going to respond to the young men we meet in our everyday lives. Guys do a lot of dumb and immature things to get girls' attention, and vice versa. My mom told me that when she was in college, guys used to shoot peas at girls during lunch. Using their spoon as a catapult, they would send peas through the cafeteria and onto a table where some girls were trying to enjoy their meal. Probably not the best way to introduce themselves. When I was in second grade and attending a Christian school, my girlfriends informed me that a boy in my class named Chad had a crush on me and wanted to kiss me. I was not very excited to hear the news, but it definitely caught me by surprise when at recess, some of Chad's friends told him they would help him catch me. Then the race began, all around the playground. I'm not sure why I didn't just run to the teacher, but instead I ran around the slide, around the merry-go-round, around the slide again, inside the jungle gym, and that's when I got caught and kissed on my cheek. I thought it was very unpleasant, but at least now that he had accomplished his mission, he seemed to forget about his crush. Throughout our lives, we will obviously encounter all sorts of young men. We need to know how to respond. We need to know how to form friendships while still guarding our hearts. We need to know when to flee. You probably won't encounter a guy chasing you around a playground tomorrow, but let's say you are sitting in church and a nice-looking young man walks up to you and begins a conversation. How should you respond? Or perhaps you're involved in a ministry in which you work with guys and girls. How friendly should you be with the young men? What if a guy starts following you around? Responding wisely to boys. Feeling confused and a little distressed, my sister Grace cornered my brother Stephen, saying, "Please help. This guy keeps following me around and talking to me. It's getting really annoying, and I don't know what to do." This friendly young man at the conference we were attending kept hanging around our family and talking to Grace, who was 14 years old at the time. At first, Grace just tried to be friendly, but after a few hours of being followed, she was getting rather frustrated. Grace tried everything. She ignored him, but he didn't seem to get the point. Then she sat down and started to read, but he just came right up to her and started a conversation. Grace asked Stephen to try to distract him, but the young man didn't seem too interested in talking with Stephen. But she tried walking around. Whenever she stopped, however, guess who was right behind her? He was a polite, friendly guy who just wanted to be friends, but it was driving Grace nuts. As we were cleaning up after from the conference late in the afternoon, I walked into a dark classroom where one of the sessions had been held to collect a few items. I flipped on the light and was startled to find someone in the room. It was Grace. She was hiding in the dark so that this special friend wouldn't be able to find her. Okay, hiding in the dark or racing around the playground is probably not the best way to deal with guys who like you. But what should you do? Many girls struggle with knowing the right way to respond in these situations. Once, as I was standing in a church, I noticed a group of girls hesitantly walking toward me. Observing their sheepish smiles and muffled snickering, I figured that they had something they wanted to ask. "We have a question," one of them finally said. "I was wondering what you think about, well, do you think it's okay, what I mean is, I have a lot of friends who are boys. I like to hang out with them. Is that okay?" I've been asked similar questions many times. Girls ask, "Is it okay to write or email boys?" How should I respond to a young man who is friendly with me? I'm a tomboy. What if I like to be with boys more than girls? What should I say to the friends who are always talking about guys? These are good questions. Let's discuss them. It really comes down to this. How do we guard our hearts? First of all, yes, of course, it's okay to be friends with young men. Obviously, it is important to be cheerful, polite, and friendly. Christian young men are our brothers in Christ and should be treated as such. At the same time, there are some important cautions to keep in mind. First, keep the friendship casual. There are different levels of friendship. There are acquaintances, casual friendships, close friendships, and intimate friendships. In order to save your heart for one and not give it away to the wrong person, friendships with young men need to stay at the acquaintance or casual level. It doesn't take long for a friendship with a guy to move from a casual friendship to something more than that. Sometimes you, as a young lady, may not even realize what is happening, but soon you find that bonds have formed and you are emotionally attached to a young boy or man whom you only intended to have as a casual friend. One way to guard your heart is to be careful not to share personal or intimate things with your guy friends. It is great to encourage each other in the Lord and share how the Lord is working in your life. But if you open up and share your heart with Him, you will most likely become too attached. In most situations, it is better to try to keep conversations short. Be aware of the fact that it is easy to give away a piece of your heart to a young man without dating him at all. During this time in your life, focus on becoming best friends with your family members and building relationships with godly young ladies. Remember, the point isn't to avoid guys, but to protect and guard your heart from being given away prematurely. Emotional intimacy belongs to your spouse. Number 2, avoid situations that will breed emotional bonds. Don't spend time alone with one young man or single one out in a group. When you are at church, school, or other events, it is good to stay in the company of several people or in families. If you get into a long one-on-one talk with a boy, you are putting yourself in a situation that can easily cause you to open up, connect with him, and find yourself in a more than casual friendship. It may mean nothing to him as a young man, but to you as a young lady, it will be a distraction and an emotional tie. And I'm going to add that it may not be anything to you, but it could be becoming something to the young man, because typically young men are not super interested in being friends with girls. They're just not as friend focused as young ladies and we as women are. The same thing applies to letter writing. I've had several young men ask me if they could write to me or email me, and I have always explained to them that I'd rather not. I want to avoid deep friendships with guys until the right one comes along. It's our desire to be close eventually with one, but not with many in the meantime. Sure, I answer emails from guys who have something they need to ask me, and sometimes correspondence is necessary, but I have chosen to avoid any serious letter writing to young men. Once premature, close friendships are formed, it's much harder to stay emotionally pure and focused on the Lord. I'm not trying to give you a list of rules, but I do want to emphasize the point that we as young ladies must guard our hearts diligently. Our natural tendency is to want to give our hearts away. In fact, God designed us to give our hearts away, but only to our future mate. If you show caution now by avoiding certain situations, you will avoid problems later. Proverbs 22:5 says, "Thorns and snares are in the way of the froward. He that doth keep his soul shall be far from them." Number 3, don't seek attention for yourself. Joe and Emily met at church. Even though he liked her right away, she did not think he could ever be the right one for her. Yet, since they saw each other every Sunday at church, they began to develop a friendship. Emily appreciated the attention he gave her. She was feeling a lack of approval and praise from her father, and so it was easy for her to look to Joe to meet her emotional needs. "We're only friends, nothing more," Emily told herself over and over again. "I don't need to worry about this. We aren't dating or anything." Soon they began to talk on the phone and to send emails and text messages. Emily told herself and everyone else that she wasn't interested in him, but Joe was falling in love with her. One day at church, he told her that he loved her. Immediately, she realized that her actions had been selfish. As she was soaking up the attention and justifying the friendship, which she never intended to be anything more than casual, she had actually been hurting him. This is a common mistake we as young ladies can easily make, encouraging guys to be interested in us simply because we appreciate the attention. Yes, of course, we naturally enjoy this kind of attention. It's fun, It feels good. But think about it. It really is purely selfish. It easily hinders and distracts young men in their spiritual lives and breeds desires that cannot be fulfilled right now. It is called defrauding, taking something that doesn't belong to us. As girls, we can defraud by dressing in a way so that boys will notice us, flirting with our eyes, or even just by the way we smile at a certain time or laugh at every joke. You know what I mean. All these things communicate a message. Yes, we might get some of the attention we're looking for, but is it worth it? Is it godly? Is it the right way to treat our brother in Christ? Number 4, ask your parents for specific guidance. No two stories are ever exactly the same. Stories are different because people are different. Some people are naturally outgoing. Others tend to be quiet. Some are in public school, others are homeschooled. Some go to college, others stay at home. Some are acquainted with numerous godly young men, others know only a few or maybe none at all. The point is that every one of us is in a unique situation. We all have varying strengths and weaknesses. Fortunately, God, who knows our individual needs, has given each of us some special help tailored just for us, our parents. If you aren't sure how friendly to be with guys, ask your parents for advice. If you're worried that a guy likes you and you don't know how to respond, discuss the situation with your parents. Since our family members know us and understand our strengths and weaknesses, God can use them to give us wise counsel. A young man once visited our church. He was a newcomer, and I wanted to be friendly, so I talked to him for a few minutes. I wasn't interested in him. I was just trying to be nice. Later that day, we had an all-church dinner, and somehow I ended up next to him in line, so we talked some more. At lunch, I also found myself at the same table with this young man. So again, we continued our discussion. After church, I remember thinking to myself, I probably came across as way too friendly. I hope I didn't give the wrong impression. I need to be more careful. The next time this young man visited our church, I sort of tried to avoid him and didn't talk to him at all. After church, my mom came up to me and said, Sarah, don't you think you could be a little more friendly with so-and-so? You walked right past him today and didn't even look at him. You could have at least said hi. The first time he visited, I didn't mean to be overly friendly, and the second time I didn't intend to be rude. But it's easy to swing from one extreme to the other and end up being too friendly, too shy, or paranoid about talking to boys at all. Discussing specific situations with my parents is what has helped me the most. They are able to discern how I am coming across to others and give wise counsel. Also, remember that if we stay focused on giving and simply doing what is right with pure motives, then we really don't need to fear what guys or anyone else may think of our actions. The less we think about ourselves, the better we are able to be gentle, sensitive, and guarded with men. And I might also say that if you have parents that are not Christian-minded or maybe are not as connected in this area of your life, find a godly person that can give you some godly counsel. A friend's mom or your pastor or youth worker or something like that. Number 5, guard your words when you are with friends. I think Ryan is so cute, I overheard my friend say. Yeah, I think so too. What do you think of Nick? Another friend asked. I'm trying to be more aggressive in getting to know guys, the first girl added. Then they noticed me standing nearby. What do you think about this, Sarah? They asked. I didn't know what to say. I was about 15 years old, and I didn't think this sounded like a very good conversation topic. I should have simply explained to them why I wanted to avoid this kind of discussion, but unfortunately I wasn't bold enough to be straightforward and tell them the truth. Instead, I simply avoided the question. Later, I realized that I had missed an opportunity to share with these girls what the Lord had been teaching me about guarding our hearts. These young ladies had a wrong attitude regarding guys, and in the years that followed, this wrong perspective led to problems. I'm very sorry to say that both of these girls have made serious mistakes, and one of them is now divorced. I wonder if things might have turned out differently if I had been courageous enough to speak up when I had the chance. These two girls were only about 12 and 13 years old at the time, not nearly old enough to be thinking about marriage. They may not have been dating, but they already had a wrong attitude, a wrong perspective, wrong goals, and were following a wrong system. They were anxious to flirt with, get attention from, and develop relationships with guys. This dangerous outlook damages many young ladies. This attitude is often encouraged and cultivated by our conversations with friends. Young ladies get together and look through magazines to pick out the cutest guys, talk about who likes who, pass on gossip about the latest couples, and discuss their favorite romance stories from movies they've seen recently. If you've been in a situation like this, I'm sure you agree that it is distracting. You want to focus on the Lord, but with everyone talking about boys all the time, you begin to wonder if it's even possible to control your thoughts. Not only do these useless conversations lead our thoughts in a wrong direction, but they breed discontentment and begin to make us feel that we are the only girl in the whole world without a boyfriend. In an effort to guard your heart, choose friends who will edify you spiritually and build you up. If you find yourself surrounded by girls who are boy crazy, be willing to stand alone by explaining to your friends why you are cautious about talking about boys. Use these awkward situations as opportunities to teach others why they need to embrace some of the safeguards that you have chosen. I'm going to pause right now and I'm going to come back and we'll pick up at number 6 on page 56.